they're trying to go after another high-profile man again. I don't know if it's working, because I kind of heard it, and then now it's quieted down. So I don't know if it's working. We'll see in the next couple days if it just totally dies down. Welcome back to Far From Eden. Good to have you here. Happy Sunday. Pardon the mess. If you're a regular, you know that I was babysitting, and, well, I haven't cleaned up yet. It doesn't take much to wear me out, and here we are. But anyway, so the man that the latest, unless there's been someone since then, the latest takedown, attempted takedown, is of Andrew Huberman. He is a podcaster, very successful one. I mean, he's not Joe Rogan, but he is a pretty successful podcast. He is a scientist, I want to say maybe neuroscientist, and a professor. He talks about health, and I like his podcasts. I listen to him once in a while, not religiously, but yeah, I think it's beneficial. So what I had heard was just little snippets here and there on the things that I watch, that there had been a hit piece on him in New York Magazine, and that and I'm purposely telling you what I heard about it. Now I realize it's not typical, because most people aren't on YouTube, especially women, and they aren't in the spaces where I am. But even the spaces where I am, I haven't heard a ton. But apparently, just to save words, I think there's a lot of women angry. He appears to be, where back in my day they would call him a player. And I thought, all right, well, let's get this hit piece and see what it is. And much to my dismay, I printed it out, because I do my old school thing and I print them out. And it printed out 8 pages, single spaced. What? Why do you need? Well, I haven't read it yet. We're here to do that together. I did do a little bit of research on the writer, the author. I think it's important to know, where is this news? Who is bringing us this information? And that person would be Carrie Howley, a features writer for New York Magazine since 2021. Also, she is a 43-year-old married woman. She's married to a writer. She is a professor of nonfiction writing at the University of Iowa. Okay. She's also, I think, written a couple of, I think they're novels, which is weird if you're the professor of nonfiction at the University of Iowa. In 2018, notably, probably the thing that most put her on the map, so to speak, was in 2018 when she wrote a piece on Larry Nassar. If you don't know who Larry Nassar is, that is the gymnastics doctor who was taking care of the U.S. gymnastics team that was accused of all kinds of terrible, horrible things. I don't know what to believe, because I know how many people get accused of things they didn't do. So it's sort of like crying wolf, because then you go, well, so that's who that guy was. I hesitate to say much more. It is YouTube, and goodness gracious, but YouTube didn't like my Cinderella video, so who knows? Who knows what it's about? So here we are. So we're going to do part 1 today, because such a huge piece of writing here. Okay. For the past 3 years, one of the biggest podcasters on the planet has told a story to millions of listeners across half a dozen shows. There was a little boy, and the little boy's family was happy, until one day, the boy's family fell apart. The boy was sent away. He foundered. He found therapy. He found science. He found exercise, and he became strong. I've watched I mean, not a bunch of his podcasts. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of this story. I've never seen him bring any of that up, but okay, so this is, all right. Today, Andrew Huberman is a stiff, jacked, 48-year-old associate professor of neurology and ophthalmology at the Stanford University School of Medicine. He is given to delivering 3-hour lectures on subjects such as the health of our dopaminergic, goodness, this is going to be tricky. I am not a neuroscientist. Neurons. His podcast is revelatory largely because it does not condescend, which has not been the way of public health information in our time. He does not give the impression of someone diluting science to universally applicable sound bites for the slobbering masses. Quote, dopamine is vomited out into the synapse, or it's released volumetrically, but then it has to bind someplace and trigger those G protein coupled receptors, and caffeine increases the number. The density of those G protein coupled receptors is how he, end quote, is how he explains the effect of coffee before exercise in a 2-hour and 16-minute deep dive that has, as of this writing, nearly 8.9 million views on YouTube. So she thought that was not condescending and good for the masses. I don't think she's met the masses. The masses don't watch Andrew Huberman. I mean, as personable as he is, I have a little bit of experience with the neurology world because of the stupid multiple sclerosis, and they are the driest. It's almost like you are dealing with a robot who's trying to be a person, and that's fine. But maybe she's trying to sort of be nice in the beginning so she can demolish. Millions of people still feel compelled to hear him draw distinctions between neuromodulators and classical neurotransmitters. Many of those people will then adopt an associated protocol. They will follow his elaborate morning routine. They will model the most basic functions of human life, sleeping, eating, seeing, on his sober advice. They will tell their friends to do the same. Quote, he's not like other bro podcasters, end quote, they will say, and they will be correct. He is a tenured Stanford professor associated with a Stanford lab. He knows the difference between a neuromodulator and a neurotransmitter. He is just back from a sold-out tour in Australia, where he filled the Sydney Opera House. Stanford at one point hung signs, authorized personnel only, apparently to deter fans in search of the lab. I don't like how they will model the most basic functions of human life. Do you know why people are looking to podcasts like Andrew Huberman to model the most basic functions of human life? Because they don't have a real family to teach them the basic things they're supposed to learn. I hear the kids here in this apartment complex at 10 o'clock at night. On a school night, any night, doesn't matter. There's no bedtime. Nobody's learning, and they haven't for a few generations now. Proper things to eat, way to sleep, all these things. You know why? Because we used to have a mother and a father and a nuclear family, and all of that was taught and was lived. You know, they would, and so it's no wonder you have grown adults needing to look to, you know, Dr. Huberman and others to try to grow the rest of the way up. But you know who's being condescending? This lady talking about the basic functions of human life and that they will all just follow. That's condescending to all the people that benefit from learning from somebody like Andrew Huberman, who is, you know, teaching people about health and a healthy, for lack of a different term, I mean, it is for a healthy lifestyle, an actual healthy lifestyle. Oh, goodness. With this power comes the power to lift other scientists out of their narrow silos and turn them too into celebrities. But these scientists will not be Huberman, whose personal appeal is distinct. Here we have a broad-minded professor, puppyishly enamored with the wonders of biological function, generous to his interviewees. I love to be wrong, she said, parentheses, engaged in endearing attempts to sound like a normal person. Now we all have to eat, and it's nice to eat foods that we enjoy. I certainly do that. I love food, in fact. I guess that's another quote that he said. And we are apparently kind of making fun of him. This is a world in which the soft art of self-care is made concrete, in which goop-adjacent platitudes find solidity in peer review. I'm sorry. Did you just compare? She just compared Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop brand that has a scented candle and all kinds of whatever to a neurologist and ophthalmologist professor at Stanford? Science is hard. Okay. People go, oh, that feels kind of like weenie stuff, Huberman tells Joe Rogan. The data shows that gratitude and avoiding toxic people and focusing on good quality social interactions, huge increases in serotonin. I guess Huberman said that. Rogan says, there is a kindness to the way Huberman reminds his audience always of the possibilities of neuroplasticity. I'm a big fan of that. They can change. He has changed. As an adolescent, he says, he endured the difficult divorce of his parents, a Stanford professor who worked in the tech industry and a children's book author. The period after the separation was, he says, one of pure neglect. His father was gone. His mother was totally checked out. He was forced around age 14 to endure a month of youth detention, a situation that was not a jail, but harrowing in its own right. Another casualty of divorce. That's my own. She didn't say that. That's what I'm saying. Quote, the thing that really saved me, Huberman tells Peter Attia, was this therapy thing. I was like, oh, bleep. I do have to choke back a little bit here. It's a crazy thing to have somebody say, listen, like, to give you the confidence, like, we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna figure this out. There's something very powerful about that. It wasn't like, everything will be okay. It was like, we're gonna figure this out. Yeah, men like a plan. Men tend to not just accept the fairy tale answer of everything will be fine. We're all gonna be happily ever after. Men will be like, how? I need to see it. Their minds are more able to see those sorts of things. The wayward son would devote himself to therapy and also to science. He would turn rancid all the way up and study all night long. He would be tenured at Stanford with his own lab, severing optic nerves in mice and noting what grew back. Huberman has been in therapy, he says, since high school. He has, in fact, several therapists and psychiatrist Paul Conti appears on his podcast frequently to discuss mental health. Therapy is, quote, hard work, like going to the gym and doing an effective workout. The brain is a machine that needs tending. Okay. So far, it's all been good stuff about Huberman. our cells will benefit from the careful management of stress. Quote, I love mechanism, says Huberman. Our feelings are integral to the apparatus. There are Huberman husbands. Oh my goodness. Why do we have to have groups and names and labels? There are Huberman husbands, men who optimize, a phenomenon not to be confused with hashtag Daddy Huberman, used by women on TikTok in the man's thrall. Oh, Lord. See, that's why I don't know what's going on, because I'm not a TikTok person. A prophet must constrain his self-revelation. He must give his story a shape that ultimately tends toward inner strength. Weakness overcome. Well, is she implying that this is a story? That he didn't have a difficult youth and childhood and trying to better himself? Is that the insinuation? I know I don't trust these writers to come in with good faith. I just don't. I just look at it like journalism is dead. Any kind of mainstream journalism, it's always an agenda, especially if they get published by somewhere like New York Magazine. Places like New York Magazine, mediums like that, they want to, there's an agenda. For Andrew Huberman to become your teacher and mine, as he very much was for a period this fall, a period in which I diligently absorbed sun-waking, drank no more than once a week, practiced physiological sighs in traffic, and said to myself out loud in my living room, I also love mechanism. A period during which I began to think seriously for the first time in my life about reducing stress, and during which both my husband and my young child saw tangible benefit from repeatedly immersing themselves in frigid water. A period in which I realized that I not only liked this podcast, but liked other women who liked this podcast. He must be, in some way, better than the rest of us. Huberman sells a dream of control down to the cellular level, but something has gone wrong. You know what? I don't look at it that way. I think she's missing the point already about what he is. What he does is understand agency, accountability, and consequences of thinking the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, not taking care of yourself. I don't understand it as selling a this or a that. I think he's figured a lot of stuff out. I think he has a curious mind, and he has decided to make himself better, and naturally he wants to teach and share this information, and that's what he's doing. I don't look at it like he's spinning a story and trying to influence people. That's what I see female influencers. It's this really should have a man write this. So she was a fan of his for a while, and she was seeing the benefits and everything. Some of Andrew's earliest Instagram posts are of his lab. We see smiling undergraduates slicing, staining, and prepping brains, and a wall of framed science publications in which Huberman authored papers appear. Nature, Cell Reports, the Journal of Neuroscience. In 2019, under the handle of @HubermanLab, Andrew began posting straightforward educational videos in which he talks directly into the camera about subjects such as the organizational logic of the brainstem. Sometimes he would talk over a simple anatomical sketch on lined paper. The impression was, as it is now, of a fast-talking teacher in conversation with an intelligent student. The videos amassed a fan base, and Andrew was, in 2020, invited on some of the biggest podcasts in the world. On Lex Fridman podcast, on Lex Fridman podcast, he talked about experiments his lab was conducting by inducing fear in people. On the Rich Roll, I think it's Rick Roll, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar, podcast, The Relationship Between Breathing and Motivation, on the Joe Rogan experiments his lab was conducting on mice. He was a fluid, engaging conversationalist, rich with insight and informed advice in a year of death and disease. When many felt a sense of agency slipping away, Huberman had a gentle plan. The subtext was always the same. We may live in chaos, but there are mechanisms of control. I wonder if he would agree with her summary of what he does, because I don't know. I've watched his podcast. I don't look at it like we can take control. By then, he had a partner, Sarah, which is not her real name. Sarah was someone who could talk to anyone about anything. She was dewy and strong and in her mid-40s, though she looked a decade younger, with 2 small kids from a previous relationship. Now we're all suspicious. She had old friends who adored her and no trouble making new ones. She came across as scattered in the way she jumped readily from topic to topic in conversation, losing the thread before returning to it. But she was in fact extremely organized. She was a woman who kept track of things. She was an entrepreneur who could organize a meeting, a skill she would need later for reasons she could not possibly have predicted. When I asked her a question in her home recently, she said the answer would be on an old phone. She stood up, left for only a moment, and returned with a box labeled "Old Phones." We're going to Crazyville, everybody. Buckle up. I can sense it. Sarah's relationship with Andrew began in February 2018 in the Bay Area, where they both lived. He messaged her on Instagram and said he owned a home in Piedmont, a wealthy city separate from Oakland. That turned out not to be precisely true. He lived off Piedmont Avenue, which was in Oakland. He was courtly and a bit formal, as he would later be on the podcast. In July, in her garden, Sarah says she asked to clarify the depth of their relationship. They decided, she says, to be exclusive. Okay. All right. So we're already suspicious because we've got this man. He's clearly very successful. I don't know how tall he is. I should have looked that up before we began this little adventure. But he's successful, famous, he's rich. What you might say classify as a high value man. And he's wanting to date exclusively this woman who has 2 children. Well, it's possible he doesn't realize that he can do better, that he doesn't need to raise somebody else's children. Or he could be like many who've come out of single mother households and think, oh, it's like my mom. She's probably a wonderful person. I'll, take this on and I'll be the white knight. We don't know yet. And we also don't know if any of this is true. Well, I believe this author, I believe this writer, it's a Freudian slip, because author is like somebody I think of that's telling a fable. I believe that this woman said that they decided to be exclusive. I'd love to know what the actual words were. Because you know how women are. You know how they are. They try to force relationship. And at what point did they have this talk about where they are? What did she say? She asked to clarify the depth of their relationship. So I don't know what all they were doing. I don't know if they were having the bedroom fun times or what, but generally that's when the women are trying to be like, hey, when are you going to propose? Kind of a thing. I could be completely wrong. I'm probably not. Both had devoted their lives to healthy living, exercise, good food, good information. They cared immoderately about what went into their bodies. Immoderately? Andrew would command a room and clearly took pleasure in doing so. Again, another assumption. You don't know. He was busy and handsome, healthy and extremely ambitious. He gave the impression of working on himself throughout their relationship. He would talk about repair and healthy merging. He was devoted to his bull mastiff, Costello, whom he worried over constantly. Sounds like she's jealous. I believe the part about the dog. Was Costello comfortable, sleeping properly? Aw. Andrew liked to dote on the dog, she says, and he liked to be doted on by Sarah. Oh, for heaven's sake, Sarah. Goodness gracious. I was never sitting around him, she says. She cooked. I get it now. Okay. I was never sitting around him, she says. She cooked for him and felt glad when he relished what she had made. Sarah was willing to have unprotected bedroom fun time because she believed they were monogamous. Based on words we don't know that he maybe said we don't know when. Okay. On Thanksgiving 2018, Sarah planned to introduce Andrew to her parents and close friends. She was cooking. Andrew texted repeatedly to say he would be late. Then later. According to a friend, he was just, oh yeah, I'll be there. Oh, I'm going to be running hours late. And then, of course, all these things were planned around his arrival, and he just kept going, oh, I'm going to be late. And then it's the end of the night, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, this and this happened. Huberman, okay. Successful people are late to things and are at work and get hung up at things. They just do. Did he know he was meeting the parents, or was this a surprise thing? We don't know. We don't even know if any of this is true. This is all one-sided. Right now, it's hearsay. Huberman disappearing was something of a pattern. Friends, girlfriends, and colleagues describe him as hard to reach. He's busy. This is a common thing, though, with women who are with men who are successful. Then they're mad that they're working all the time, or they're busy, or they're, not available to them whenever they want. It's like, well, he's not going to be at your beck and call. He's going to be busy. I grew up with my dad like that. He was late a lot of times because he was at work. He had to miss things because he was at work. You know why he was working? For us. So, goodness gracious. Yeah. The list of reasons for not showing up included a book, time stamping the podcast, Costello, the donkey, wildfires, and a meetings tunnel. All valid. She sounds demanding. Quote, he is flaky and doesn't respond to things, end quote, says his friend Brian McKenzie, a health influencer, somebody who has a reason to want to have their name in something, who has collaborated with him on breathing protocols. And if you can't handle that, Andrew definitely is not somebody you want to be close to. That's fair enough. That's like a dude, he might say that and be like, but that's him. And so and that's the other thing a lot of times women will do is they'll get with a man and he's a certain way, and then later on they want to change him. It's like, that is who you chose. You chose him like this. You don't get to now complain. You get with the program, or it's not for you. Nope. He in some ways disappeared, says David Spiegel, a Stanford psychiatrist who calls Andrew prodigiously smart. Like he's like a prodigy. That's what I can tell you. Man, reading about Andrew Huberman, I sound like a moron. That's fine. And intensely engaging. I recently got a really nice email from him, which I was touched by. I really was. So this psychiatrist said that. He sounds like he's intense. Most successful and very intelligent men can be quite intense, and they can be quite hyper-focused. It's not personal, woman. Now, for all I know, he was always like this. But if he's always like this, then why are you still with him? I know a lot of you guys are like, why are you complaining about all this stuff? Why didn't you just go? That it's force, force, force. It's, I don't like you're like this. I want you to change. Now I need you to be like exclusive. Pressure, pressure, pressure. And she already has 2 kids. Lady. Man, this is really like, it just dings all the boxes so far for us, doesn't it? We're just also so apprehensive about believing anything since the hashtag believe all women, hashtag me too. We're like, hashtag not again, hashtag no more lies. Okay. In 2018, before he was famous, Huberman invited a Colorado-based investigative journalist and anthropologist, Scott Carney, to his home in Oakland for a few days. The two would go camping and discuss their mutual interest in actionable science. It had been Huberman, a fan of Carney's book, What Doesn't Kill Us, who initially reached out, and the two became friendly over phone and email. Huberman confirmed Carney's list of camping gear, sleeping bag, bug spray, boots. When Carney got there, the two did not go camping. Huberman simply disappeared for most of a day and a half while Carney stayed home with Costello. He puttered around Huberman's place, buying a juice, walking through the neighborhood, waiting for him to return. It was extremely weird, says Carney. Huberman texted from elsewhere saying he was busy working on a grant. What did I just say? They get hyper-focused. They lose track of time. They're in their heads. Is that kind? Probably not. Is it inconsiderate? Yes. However, this is not predatory behavior, is what I'm getting at. This is not, he's not out there trying to destroy lives. A spokesperson for Huberman says he clearly communicated to Carney that he went to work. Eventually, instead of camping, the two went on a few short hikes. Even when physically present, Huberman can be hard to track. Quote, I don't have total fidelity to who Andrew is, says his friend Patrick Dossett. There's always a little unknown there. He describes Andrew as an amazing thought partner with almost total recall, such a memory that one feels the need to watch what one says. Interesting. A stray comment could surface 3 years later, and yet at other times you're like, all right, I'm saying words and he's nodding, or he is responding, but I can tell something I said sent him down a path that he's continuing to have internal dialogue about, and I need to wait for him to come back. It reminds me of my mom saying that even when your father's home, he's not here. Again, I've told you guys before, that's parental alienation while your parents were married. But to say that, and I never would have thought that growing up, didn't occur to me. But of course, once one parent says that, you start to sort of look for it, I guess, see it, whether it's there or not. But yeah, these men who are incredibly smart, which my dad is, they are in their heads a lot. It's part of who they are. You can like that or not, but you don't get to want to be close with that person or friends with that person and then start taking it personally and complaining all the time that they are that way. You either accept it and deal with it and work with it, or you don't. This is not something that is, what is wrong with women that we can't seem to understand this? You just don't get to go around and tell everybody what to do and how to do it. That's a simple way to put it. Okay. Andrew Huberman declined to be interviewed for this story. I don't blame him. There's nothing he could have said that wasn't going to get twisted. Especially in this day and age. It's just once there's an agenda, there's an agenda. And the worst thing you can do is sit there and deny it and try to defend it, because they will just twist it and turn it around. You just have to rise above it. That's what I didn't learn that myself. You look at like somebody like Dave Chappelle when he got attacked and they tried to cancel him. And Joe Rogan, same. You know, they're like, and it went better for them. And all the people who have apologized and tried to backtrack, whatever, not gone so well. Andrew Huberman declined to be interviewed for the story. Through a spokesman, Huberman says he did not become exclusive with Sarah until late 2021, that he was not doted on, that tasks between him and Sarah were shared based on mutual agreement and proficiency, that their Thanksgiving plans were tentative, and that he, quote, maintains a very busy schedule and shows up to the vast majority of his commitments. I know I'm biased. I believe him. I believe that. I was already thinking that that was pretty much the case before, because I know men like him. Like I said, like my father. I get it. In the fall of 2020, Huberman sold his home in Oakland and rented one in Topanga, a wooded canyon enclave contiguous with Los Angeles. When he came back to Stanford, he stayed with Sarah, and when he was in Topanga, Sarah was often with him. When they fought, it was, she says, typically because Andrew would fixate on her past choices. Sorry. Oh, I enjoyed that too much. That's too much. Fixate on her past choices, the men she had been with before him, 2 children she had with another man. I experienced his rage, Sarah recalls, as 2 to 3 days of yelling in a row. When he was in this state, he would go on until 11 or 12 at night and sometimes start again at 2 or 3 in the morning. Well, what was she saying? Was she there? Oh, darling, I just don't know why you'd be so mad. I baked you so much bread. I'm terribly sorry for all of my past. It was a mistake. Blah, blah, blah. That's not the part she's saying. She's not. Sure. He just went to 11 to 12 and she was saying nothing. There was no... Could it be that he was trying to understand you better, lady, to understand, do you understand the decisions and everything you've done? Do you take accountability for that, or are you not? I need way more information about these fights, because I'm sorry, I just know women way too well. I just don't think so. I don't think that that's how it went at all. Do I think he might have yelled? Maybe. Do I think it could have gone late? Maybe. But as if she's there and it's fine, well, okay, lady. Well, why are you still there then? If it went to 11 or 12 at night and it's this rage, why are you still there? Because you're yelling too. Because you want more relationship. Because you want more of him. Because you want him to change. He's got questions. He's got concerns. Can't do that. That's abusive. Whew. The relationship struck Sarah's friends as odd. Oh, you gotta have the friends. You gotta have the hive. Gotta have the girl squad. At one point, Sarah said, quote, I just want to be with my kids and cook for my man. I was like, who says that? Says a close friend. Traditional women say that. And this lady is not that. He's not your man. Those aren't his kids. You don't get to suddenly decide you want to play house and pretend you're all these pretend lies. I mean, I've known her for 30 years. She's a powerful, decisive, strong woman. That's our favorite. We grew up in this very feminist community. Oh my God. That's not a thing either of us would ever say. So, do you see this? She was betraying. How dare you say those things that you want to cook for your man? She's clearly got Stockholm syndrome. Another friend found him stressful to be around. You know what? I try to be open-minded, she said of the relationship. I don't want to be the most negative, non-supportive friend just because of my personal observations and disgust over somebody. She's one of those, bless your heart. I don't want to be rude, but that's who this friend is. Wow. When they were together, he was buzzing, anxious. He's like, oh, my dog needs his blanket hit this way. And I'm like, your dog is just laying there and super cozy. Why are you being weird about the blanket? Okay. Sarah was not the only person who experienced the extent of Andrew's anger. Have you guys seen this man's podcast? He is so mild-mannered. I understand people can be different behind closed doors, but I have a feeling it would take quite a bit to get this guy revved up. In 2019, Carney sent Huberman materials from his then forthcoming book, The Wedge, in which Huberman appears. He asked Huberman to confirm the parts in which he was mentioned. For months, Huberman did not respond. Carney sent a follow-up email. If Huberman did not respond, he would assume everything was accurate. In 2020, after months of saying he was too busy to review the materials, Huberman called him, and Carney says, came at him in a rage. I've never had a source I thought was friendly go bananas, says Carney. Screaming, Huberman threatened to sue and accused Carney of violating Navy OPSEC. What does that mean? I know you guys are going to tell me. I don't know. Operation something. It had become by then one of the most perplexing relationships of Carney's life. That year, Carney agreed to Huberman's invitation to swim with sharks on an island off Mexico. First, Carney would have to spend a month of his summer getting certified in Denver. He did, at considerable expense. Huberman then canceled the trip a day before they were set to leave. No. Please like the video if you're enjoying it so far. Lola just had a little woof, and whenever she has her opinions, it reminds me to ask you to like the video. Oh, goodness gracious. So Huberman canceled the trip a day before they were set to leave. Quote, I think Andrew likes building up people's expectations, says Carney. Quote, and then he actually enjoys the opportunity to pull the rug out from under you. That's another huge accusation. In January 2021, Huberman launched his own podcast. Its reputation would be directly tied to his role as teacher and scientist. Quote, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast, he would say every episode, I can hear him in my head, with its particular combination of formality and discursiveness, quote, is separate from my teaching and research roles at Stanford. It is, however, part of my desire and effort to bring zero cost to consumer information about science and science-related tools to the general public. Quote, I remember feeling quite lonely and making some efforts to repair that. Huberman would say on his episode in 2024, loneliness, his interviewee said, is a need state, end quote. In 2021, the country was in the later stages of a need state, bored, alone, powerless. The country? Like the United States? In the later stages of a need state, bored, alone, powerless. Huberman offered not only hours of educative Why are they changing? Or why isn't it educational? I don't know. Educative listening, but a plan to structure your day. A plan for walking, for eating, for exercising, for sleep, at a time when life had shifted to screens. He brought people back to their corporeal selves. He advised a physiological sigh, 2 short breaths and a long one out to reduce stress. He pulled countless people from their laptops and put them in rhythm with the sun. Thank you for all you do to better humanity. Read comments on YouTube. You may have just saved my life, man. If Andrew were a science teacher for everyone in the world, someone wrote, no one would have missed even a single class. That is a great place to end for part 1 of this saga. What a cesspool this article is so far. It's weak. Like, so far we're trying to make him seem like a bad guy. It's very weak. He's have you ever heard the term absent-minded professor? It's a thing for a reason. It's literally, it's an archetype of its own. And a man who's very, very smart and hardworking, there are going to be some of the flaws are going to be, he's going to forget personal life. He's going to struggle more interpersonally than others. But if you're going to be in a long-term relationship with somebody like that, you either be in it or don't. Even today, actually every single day, I go outside with Lola the first time of the day. If the sun is coming up, and sometimes it's before that, but if the sun is coming up, I hear Dr. Huberman's voice in my head saying, try to get sunlight in your eyes early in the day. He is helpful. He's a good teacher, and it's interesting, the things that he, it's applicable. You can apply it to your life. I appreciate that about him. I'm not over here thinking that he's showing me control, like she said in the beginning. It's odd. It's an odd way to receive someone like a science professor. I mean, maybe if you feel like your life is total chaos, then you would go, oh, these are some ways I can order it. I don't know. I didn't realize that this hit piece, as it's been called, is so one woman focused. And so far, what are our accusations? He doesn't pay enough attention to her. He pays too much attention to his dog. She cooks for him, and he doesn't appreciate it the right way or the way she wants. And he's, he didn't want to meet her parents, or he didn't show up that time, and she's implying something about that. She's assigning meaning to it. It may or may not have meaning. We don't know. Very one-sided, as all of these sorts of things are. Here's the thing. It's not going to go well when you date. And then nobody really knows, is this for marriage? Is this for fun? Where are we? Let's define it. That's a problem. And we can pretend it's not. And in society's doing a great job pretending it's not. But it is. Because that's how you end up with, oh, she already had 2 kids. Well, where's that guy? And why aren't they together? And what about those kids? You don't think that Andrew Huberman is thinking about his parents' divorce and then looking at those 2 kids that don't have their dad and wondering why not? Of course. I also here's a sort of a prediction going forward. It might be wrong, but I think it's possible that what if Dr. Huberman has a problem, maybe it's that he has a hard time disappointing people and saying no. Maybe he has a hard time with that and tends to kind of like, yeah, okay, but then things come up and he's overextended. It could be that. But that's the thing. That's my whole point. We don't know if it's that because we are too determined with this article that we know exactly what it is, that he's a predator, that he's, he's out for himself and he just takes advantage of everybody. He doesn't care about anybody except his dog. I'm an animal person. I'm like, I don't know. He cares a lot about his dog and how the blanket is for his dog. I think he's probably a good guy. But, oh my gosh. Well, let me know what you guys think of this story so far. Don't give away anything else if there's, more conclusions in this saga. I mean, we're only partway through. But, wow. It's another man accused of being, I don't even know what he's accused of so far. Is he accused of being an a-hole? Not even being an a-hole. Like, what are you accused of? Nothing. But is it possible? Here we go. Where's my tinfoil hat? Is it possible that Andrew Huberman, as a scientist, maybe, and after I've read all of this, I'm going to research this part and make a note to myself. Is it possible that after all this science that we had in 2020 in certain medications and certain diseases, is it possible that he's one of the ones, like Brett Weinstein, right? Weinstein, that thinks, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe that wasn't what we were told it was. And I'm using all this general vague language because we know what we mean and we know YouTube doesn't like any of it. But it could be that that's the case. Remember Russell Brand not that long ago? And they tried to say that he was guilty of snuggle struggle, actually using it properly this time. I know. That he was guilty of that, but in reality, he was the most critical of the pharmaceutical industry at that time and how things were handled in 2020. He was getting really, really, really critical of those things. And then all of a sudden, there were all these weird accusations from decades ago, never went anywhere because we all went, wait a minute, I know what you're doing. So that's what I'm like, okay, we know there's an agenda out there against men, and we know who is pulling the strings. The elite overlord, state. So, do they want to silence him? Is that what part of this is? I don't know. But it's generally the way it goes. And this is weak so far. So, interesting. Maybe that's why it's so long. So like maybe if we make it long enough, people won't read it. They'll just assume there's a lot there. People really only read the headlines anyway. And they'll just believe it. That's what happened with Johnny Depp. They call him a wife beater on, publications, especially over in London. And it ruined his whole career. That's one reason I wanted to cover this. Because I'm like, no, we're going to read that whole thing and we're going to analyze it and we're going to figure out who's writing it and why and what this is all about. Because I'm highly, highly doubtful anytime a man is accused now. Just, nope. I've learned, can't trust them. So, thanks for joining me on this one. And the unicorn will be back next time. And I really appreciate y'all. I was so tired after babysitting, but it was fun. I feel rejuvenated now after analyzing all this. And I can't wait to, I promise I won't read ahead, but I look forward to tomorrow. We will go to the next segment and see what we find out, what kind of truth we can uncover here. And now I want to watch him even more. It's got an even bigger fan in me now that this has happened. But anyway, so it's great to be with y'all again, and I want you guys to take some time for yourselves, especially on a lovely Sunday where it feels slower. And hopefully you find some peace for yourselves today and do something that feeds your soul. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Take care.